Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of my podcast. And today I want to discuss the question of whether or not you should get a second degree, specifically a bachelor's degree, to fix a bad GPA. Before I start, welcome to my Multiple Careers podcast. I make videos and now my first podcast on how you can build a fulfilling and meaningful career rather than just going with the flow and doing what everyone else does and expects. So in this podcast, I want to help you to break down the problems and the challenges that you face in your career and also share my thoughts. And I will try my best not to be one of those podcasts or speakers who just pat you on the back saying everything's going to be fine and easy and great, but I'll also try to give you the hard truths, knowing that these are often needed to make the best decisions in life. This podcast will be useful for all those of you who are struggling with this question. Perhaps you've been thinking about this back and forth, but you couldn't come to a decision yet. Perhaps you've also already seen my video on this, and if not, I'll link this down in the comments below. This video will be great for those of you who want a more in-depth answer to this. I got a lot of questions about this, whether or not you should get a second bachelor's degree to fix a bad GPA, on some of my videos and my inbox also, and I'm going to try to answer these here. And this is also what has prompted me to start a podcast, because I felt the need to have a platform where I can talk in more length and detail about certain things like this. I'll still be publishing this on my YouTube channel, but if I see that there's interest and I can actually provide value to you, my audience, then I will possibly transfer this to a proper podcast platform. And I hope that if you're busy, you can listen to this while doing other stuff. Perhaps you're doing the dishes or whatever, so while you're getting things done, you can use that time more efficiently and get some useful insights from this. Now let's get back to the question. Should or should you not get a second bachelor's degree to fix your bad GPA? And I'll tell you up front that there is no straightforward answer to this because it is so situation specific. I would love to just give you a template answer and tell you that you should never ever get a second bachelor's degree, especially not when you've just got your first bachelor's degree, but I think that would be irresponsible because there are always exceptions, and I just don't want to risk giving you this answer because the exception might apply to you. So let's go through this in more detail. I really understand your frustration. You've worked so hard and so long on this, and you even spent so much money on this in most cases to get this degree, but for some reason it just didn't work out as planned and you're stuck with this bad grade. And now you're about to graduate or you've graduated, and the next thing that you want to do is try and get a job, but you really feel like you're not that well equipped to get a job because of this GPA, and it's a situation that really sucks and you feel like you're at the bottom of things. And it seems like an easy solution, an easy way out, to just go back to school and kind of do the whole thing all over again. Go through those 4 years or whatever time is needed to get your bachelor's degree, work hard on it in the hopes that this time around you'll get a stellar GPA, which you can use to get a great job. So doesn't this thought process make sense? I would say no, and it has some problems, and I'm sure that you are aware that this might not be the best solution because otherwise you wouldn't have found your way to this podcast. And here I want to challenge you to ask yourself why it is that you want to get a great GPA. I mean, everyone ideally wants to have a good GPA, right? But in this case, in the situation where you're getting a second bachelor's degree, there are so many costs involved. Time, money, effort, opportunity costs, and it's really useful here to give it a second thought and think if it's really worth it, if it's really worth going back to school just to fix this number. The usefulness of a GPA depends on what you actually want to do with it. If it's your first job, it might matter, but this will largely depend on the industry and also the country where you're looking for a job, but mostly also on your goals. As I said before, if you, for example, want to work at NASA, then they will scrutinize your GPA because it is so competitive. But I can't give you a template answer because it really depends on where you want to go with this GPA. Let me share with you my experience. I graduated from a top business school in Germany, and during my first 2 years, my grades were really superb. And not only that, but I also got through the program faster than the average, faster than anyone else. I don't know what happened at that time, but in the beginning, I was so motivated, partly because I was certain that that is what I wanted to do, and that I was really happy with my decision to study that subject. But then something happened towards the end of my study program that made my grades plummet, and I wasn't happy at all about that. It kind of dragged me down. I firmly believe that it wasn't a matter of capability, but rather a matter of interest. The reason why I was so motivated in the beginning was because I thought that I made the right choice. So I started off studying economics at the University of Heidelberg, but then I transferred to the University of Mannheim, where I continued with business administration. And in the beginning, my motivation was to understand more about business administration because I had the goal of one day in my life starting my own business and succeeding at it. But little did I know how theoretical the program, the courses were. I mean, in general, in universities, everything is more on the theoretical side, but in Germany, I would say that it's even more the case. Although now, I think in the last years, things might have shifted a bit and they include more courses that are more practice-oriented, but in short, it wasn't really what I expected. So I was starting to lose a bit of interest. I was still interested in the subject overall, but not as much as in the beginning, and that showed in my coursework. But apart from that, I also had my own personal problems, relationship problems, blah, blah, blah. And I think that it's possibly the same with you. Your relatively low GPA may or may not be a reflection of your current capabilities. It may or may not mean that you were lazy. It could mean that you were lazy on a few subjects. I mean, I was, but it doesn't mean that you are a lazy person. It could be a result of many other different things or situations you were going through at that time of your life that resulted in that bad GPA. And here I come to a very, very important point. Whatever your GPA is, never identify yourself with your GPA. You are not your GPA. I wanted to say this because I noticed that the people who sent in their questions and commented on my video about this always phrased their problem and their question in a way that showed that they identify themselves so tightly with their GPA. They said that this is my GPA. It's so bad. I'm afraid I can't get a job. What should I do? Should I go back to school and improve my GPA? So they're kind of in a panic mode because they think that they as humans, they are only as good as their GPA, which is of course not the case. So that being said, in the real world, the fact is that sometimes GPA does matter, but sometimes it does not. And that is why you got to be specific. You got to figure out what you want to do and how much a good GPA actually matters in that field. So I graduated with a rather average grade, but my thesis was pretty good. I got a good grade on that. And that is also what I put on my resume going forward when I was applying for jobs instead of my GPA. I didn't really put my GPA on it because it's not something that I was particularly proud of. I graduated from one of the top business programs in Germany at the time and also now, and I highlighted that fact on my resume. I don't know what your situation is in particular, but I'm pretty sure that there is something good that you can emphasize on your resume besides your GPA. Extracurricular activities or other interests or other achievements, something that shows that you do have a goal in life and you are capable of achieving these goals. The biggest challenge will be to get through that first job where oftentimes GPA is looked at. And once you're past that stage, it's very rare that people will ask you about your GPA. So I got my first job at a multinational bank as a management trainee, and I got one of the very prestigious positions. I think that it was due to the way that I presented myself and my capabilities. No one question my GPA. No one asked me, why didn't you put your GPA here? I want to know your GPA. Tell me what your GPA is. That just didn't happen. But of course, this is not the rule. There will always be hiring managers and companies who want to know about your GPA specifically. And I understand the challenge because nowadays we apply online, and oftentimes that requires us to actually input a number there. And there are also various scanning systems that automatically scan through your resume and find your GPA and sort you in or out based on that. I understand that challenge, but another thing that I'll talk about maybe in another podcast is also that the fastest and easiest way to get a job is oftentimes not through your resume, but through connections, by reaching out to your network. By doing that, you will get the chance to talk directly to someone who is in a position to hire you. You can kind of precede your resume by making a strong impression on that person, and that can be something that ultimately gets you the job. Anyways, once I got to my next job, no one ever cared or asked about my GPA again, and that's why I never included it on my resume anymore. Yes, perhaps if I were to apply as a teaching assistant at a university or get into some ultra competitive program or trainee jobs. But if not, if your goal is just to get a normal job, let's say, in most cases, people won't care that much about your GPA in the long run. But again, as I said, it's specific to your goals. What is specifically looked at in your industry or particular job that you want to have? And the best way to get an idea about this, a realistic picture of this, is to talk with the people who are already in the industry. Don't make your decision on whether or not you should get a second degree and fix your GPA dependent just on your assumption that you need that stellar GPA, because then you would just be wasting your time, right? That being said, if you have a less than stellar GPA and you are on job hunt, you will need to find other ways how you can highlight and emphasize your skills and experiences. A manager or a hiring manager within seconds of talking to you will already have an idea of your level of intelligence and your personality, and that is likely to trump anything else. Now, are your chances higher if you had a great GPA? Ceteris paribus, or all other things remaining the same? Yeah, duh. But by how much is the question? Ask yourself if this benefit of a great GPA will outweigh all the costs, your time, effort, money, and so on. As I always mention in my YouTube videos, time is something that you cannot get back. And there are so many other things that you could do instead of studying for another 3, 4, or 5 years. About money, if money is not an issue for you, then you will have it a bit easier. But if money is an issue, as for the majority of people, then carefully weigh the value of that money. What impact will that have on your financial situation and your future? Will that be worth the small increase in GPA? And here I refer you back to the earlier point. It depends on how much the GPA matters for the specific goal you're after. I personally love studying, and I loved my time at the university so much. I simply enjoy the process. You just attend classes, do your coursework, and it feels like a time where you don't have that much responsibility apart from studying and taking exams. But now sometimes I think about how long I spent studying in Germany. And in Germany, most people study very long. And I think whether or not that was really the best usage of my time. I could have done so many other things in the meantime. I could have started my first career much earlier. You do learn a lot at university, but it's nothing compared to real life, real working life. Learning about business and accounting? Try working with real investors, and that will give you a real idea of what it's like. Talking about marketing? Try doing marketing in a company and experience how it is to try and win market share, etc. Phew, it's so much different than the theory. If you are up for research or doing a PhD, then this might be the perfect environment for you, and you should spend more time at university. But if you want to do is non-research, just a practical job, then I would try to get more hands-on experience rather than trying to fix that GPA, because experience is also something that you can put on your resume, and that can be much more valuable to an employer than simply a number. Because what does the number say? The number says that you did well on your exams, but having valuable work experience, skills, capabilities, and references from other employers, I would say that that means so much more. Another factor is age. I am someone who believes that age doesn't matter as much as we think. It's not that it doesn't matter at all. What I mean by this is that age shouldn't be a detractor when it comes to trying new things, trying to change your life for the better, changing careers, and so on. You can even do that at a very advanced stage. But it does matter in a sense that when you apply for a job and you're already in your, let's say, end 20s or early 30s, because the person interviewing you will have an impression and expectation of you. Of course, age is not on your resume, at least not in North America, but the person can take an easy guess by just looking at your resume, at your history, and they can simply guess approximately how old you are. And the hiring person, based on this, will have some kind of expectations about what experience you should have at your age. This means that, for example, if the person thinks you're like 20, 21, and you just graduated, they'll not expect you to have 5 years of work experience. But if they look at you and think you're approaching 30 or you're in your early 30s and they see like one job at the school library, then it will raise questions. They will think, what happened here? What has the person done in their 8 or 10 years after graduating? Why didn't they have any experience, or why didn't they accumulate any skills? And let's not talk about whether the person should or should not have these expectations. It's not about should or should not. It's just a fact. It's a reality of life. So in order to get a job, the hiring manager will look at what you did before, what hands-on experience you have, which is much more important than your GPA. If I put myself in the shoes of a hiring manager, or let's just say if I would hire someone to edit my videos for me on my YouTube channel, I wouldn't care that much about the person's GPA. Maybe I would ask him or her, what happened here? Why is your GPA so and so? What happened during your studies? And then I would listen to their explanation. And I think that this part is also extremely important, how you explain your situation. How did you get to this GPA? And for me personally, if the answer makes sense and I see that the person is capable, has the skills, and has the right attitude, then I would still hire this person. I would want to see specifically what they've done in their field, how professional they were, whether they are proactive, if they've taken initiative to learn more about this area, and also whether there is a personality fit. This is something that people often don't think about, that hiring managers are not that objective. You have to keep in mind that hiring managers are still people. They don't just go based on a list of qualifications or just look at the number. That's not the way they compare candidates. Personality fit and mindset is something that is really important when it comes to hiring decisions. I did a bit of hiring myself during my time in banking and also as film producer, and when I got people on board, I would, especially if it was a fresh grad, look at their GPA, what they studied, what their work experience was, what skills they have, so on. But personality and mindset, that was also always a big factor, because working together is not a mechanical thing. Of course, the person has to be qualified. That is number one. If you're not qualified, then there's no use at all. But I don't think that you can say whether a person is qualified or not simply by looking at their GPA. You also look at a person's personality. First impressions do count, and they can make up for a less than ideal GPA. But again, as I said, on a case-by-case basis. For hiring managers, the most important thing is that they want to know whether or not you'll be able to do the job and whether or not you'll be a good fit for the team. That's why I think not having enough work experience suitable for your age especially is much more alarming than a bad GPA. So now, assuming that you didn't have much work experience yet, should you spend another 4 years to get a degree, or spend it on getting a series of work experience or on the job skills so that you can showcase these on your resume? And during the interviews that you will have, you can also talk about your actual work experience. Studying for another 4 years in the hopes of raising that GPA from 2.8 to, let's say, 3.1, does it really make sense? I think you know the answer. So to recap, number one, try to figure out what your career goals are for the next 3 to 5 years, or even just for the next 1 to 2 years is better than nothing. And honestly, answer the question of how much that GPA will actually affect your chances of reaching that career goal. And number two, do not make assumptions, but go out there and try to connect to someone who is actually already working in that industry and ask them, in their industry or in their job, how much does GPA actually matter, and what other things do hiring managers look at? The thing is that you have to work backwards. You have to find out what is needed first for the goal that you want to achieve, and then accumulate all the things that are required for that, instead of just going ahead and trying to fix your GPA and finding out in the end that it doesn't make that much of a difference, and therefore losing a lot of time. Number three, take some time to think about the costs. Not only costs in terms of time, money, and effort, but also opportunity costs. If it takes you, let's say, 3 to 4 years to get that second bachelor's degree, think of all the things that you could do in that time. If you get a second bachelor's degree, what you are effectively doing is you are spending money, you are losing financial resources, you are making an investment in your education, and you have to be able to try and evaluate how much that is actually worth. Compare that to all the other things that you could do within those 4 years. What are the opportunity costs? How much work experience could you accumulate in those 4 years? Whether or not getting actual work experience and on-the-job training might not be something that is more useful when it comes to achieving your long-term career goals. I hope that this podcast was useful to you and that it could provide some insights that can help you to make the best decision. Feel free to drop your thoughts and your experiences in the comments below. I'll not be able to give you any straightforward answer because there is no straightforward answer to this. It is really situation specific and only you know what is best for your particular situation. But I hope that by brainstorming this and by going through your thoughts, you'll be able to get to a conclusion soon. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you an awesome day. Take care, and I hope to catch you again soon in the next episode.